Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Vegan Proteins, Muscles by Brussels Radio. My name is Giacomo.
And I'm Danny.
And this is our 100th episode.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are so excited to be at episode 100, hopefully before the end of the year, because we're definitely recording this on the 12th. So here's hoping it comes out by the end of the year. So hopefully everybody is gearing up for a lovely New Year's at this point, right? By the time this comes out, we should have our goal setting workshop scheduled at this point. So we will leave the link to that, the date, all of that down in the show notes, because we don't have it scheduled right now as of recording it. But that is always a huge hit every year. Last year, I think we had like over 200 people show up to that goal setting workshop, sit around, talk about how to set goals, how to choose goals, how to break them down so that you can actually accomplish said goals. It's a lot of fun. You should come. So this past weekend, me and Giacomo and my mother took Daisy and Desmond out to see this Christmas light show. It was like a drive-through light show on a farm that I have wanted to go to for years. It's right here in town. I've never been. It's like, we have the kids. This is perfect.
I'm a good spirit, so when Danny was like, this slideshow is trash, obviously she didn't say that in front of the kids, because like, who wants to disappoint the kid? We were like, wow, this is amazing. They're like, yeah, it's so cool. And I felt like that regardless of the excitement we were trying to create for the kids. And Danny was like, that was just trash.
That was trash. It was the worst ever. I can't believe we paid to go see it. It was just like these two-dimensional, like, light cutouts, I guess. It was like a cutout of characters decorated with lights, but it was like the most busted, janky-ass 1970s light bright version of things where like you had to guess what it was trying to be a shape of. You know what I mean? Like one of them was a cheeseburger. I'm like, what does this have to do with Christmas? It was, and the roads, like driving through the road, it was just potholes everywhere because it was a farm. So I guess that's kind of on us. Like we should have anticipated that. But oh my God. And Daisy was like, this is amazing. This is the best night ever. I'm going to remember this forever. And I was like, yeah, that's so awesome. This is so cool. And as soon as we got home, I was like, that sucked. That super sucked.
I honestly still don't feel that way, although I could understand where Danny's coming from, because when you think about light shows that are done up really well, like, yeah, like y'all weren't even trying.
I've seen houses decorated better than this $25 attraction was. So I don't know, man. Whatever. The kids had fun. That's all that matters. And then Daisy promptly came down with the flu the following day. Just as we're gearing up to head out to Mr. America in Vegas, Daisy gets the flu. Now, Jocko and I both feel fine right now. So,
look, maybe this is me not being all reasonable and whatnot, but I feel like I've built up quite a tolerance to their germs.
Kid sicknesses.
And our niece and nephew's
now that you've said that,
particular.
We're doomed. You know that, right?
Nah.
Like we are officially doomed because of that sentence.
Nah, we'll see.
So, yeah, I'm thinking about it. And I'm like, oh, Daisy and I split an acai bowl yesterday. And I remember at one point she had a strawberry in her mouth that was too cold, so she spit it back into the bowl. Did I stop eating it? I sure did not. So I'm really, really hoping to not get the flu.
All right, be right back. Danny's going to record this episode on her own in his closet because I don't want to breathe the germs that she's absorbing right now from whatever Daisy has.
Oh, God, kids do not let you catch a break. Let me tell you. So, anyway, to be continued how this trip went down. I ordered the super cool camera that was supposed to be like great for vlogging so that we could vlog some of the Vegas trip, and it's still not here, and I am super annoyed about it. Because maybe there will be a recording of it, but maybe there won't be. So we will see. Anyway, 100th episode, which is crazy. I'm actually curious to see what episode we started on this year, because this was definitely our most prolific year of podcasting. This podcast started 8 years ago. Can you believe that? 8 years ago. And then we like banged them out really well at first. And then they came slower and slower and slower. So yeah, we didn't put a podcast out till February, and it was episode 83, so it'll be 17 episodes for the year. That actually sounds kind of pathetic, doesn't it?
Well, no, I mean, I'm pretty happy about it, honestly. And we did a lot of recording with others on their podcast
That's
this
true.
year. So, as far as audio is concerned, I feel like we've put a lot out there this year. But yeah, our podcast, speaking of which, I think our goal is to interview others. So, if there are any fitness professionals,
For vegans.
anyone in particular that you want us to interview, let us know, because we're going to be gathering a list of others, and it's the intention. I can't promise it'll happen, but I think that we're going to start to try to interview others. Regardless, we're going to keep this thing going strong into the new year and put out lots of episodes, so feel free to continue to tune in because we got a lot more to say.
Yeah, believe it or not. So I just said we put out 17 episodes by the end of this year, which is not great. That's like 1.5 a month. For next year, we have, as it stands, 52 episodes planned right now.
Damn.
So we'll see. Maybe 2023 is the podcasting year. I certainly hope so, because I quite like that I get to do this in my pajamas and no one has to see me. So we'll see.
Shall.
What are we talking about today?
Well, we are talking about fitness and how it isn't everything, but it affects everything.
Okay. All right.
And the way that I like to think about opening up this conversation is we often try to compartmentalize, right? It's human nature to be like, I'm going to do this thing, and this is what's important to me, and I'm going to try not to let it negatively affect anything else. And then, ideally, it'll improve my quality of life. But I think we wind up excusing ourselves out of getting better and better at the thing we want to do and doing it well. But when it comes to fitness affects everything, because in one way it takes away in the beginning while you're getting into being more fit and active and eating better. Like, it requires effort and energy, but it also gives you more energy. You become more able-bodied, you feel healthier, you make better decisions. I think it improves your quality of life. And that, but there are some consequences to focusing on fitness as well. I think that's an important thing to look at I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? That becoming a healthier person is going to make you a better person for everyone and everything around you. But we don't think about the limitations that it imposes on us when we start to prioritize our workouts over other things, or eating a certain way over, like, how do I say this? So it requires effort. I mean, we constantly talk about balance here, like, we're balance and sustainability. But the bottom line is that when you when you work on getting better and better at something, it will in fact compromise what you're able to do, right? So, like, it makes it harder to do other things. I'm trying to think about where I want to go with this, Danny. Put it this way. You're an athlete, right? Mm-hmm. When you get more and more into fitness, eventually you just have to accept the fact that you are an athlete. You think like an athlete, you act like an athlete, you do like an athlete. And not everyone is an athlete, right? So when you're, say, hanging out with your family, right, and their lifestyle is different, they're going to feel that, because if they're not all athletes and you are, right, your lifestyle is going to be a little different. And that can have an impact on all kinds of things. I don't know about you, but like, when I go to visit my family, I think about how I'm going to exercise while I'm hanging out with them, for example. Or, am I going to be getting in my protein, for example?
So sometimes when we come up with these podcast topics, we just write down the topic and say, oh, this is what the topic will be. And then we don't talk about it. And then we come to this podcast, and once in a blue moon, I realize, oh crap, we have completely different interpretations of what this podcast title meant. So you guys can't see it, but I'm just sitting here looking very confused at Giacomo about what he is talking about. So I'm just going to sit here and let him keep talking about it, and then I can give you guys my interpretation of that.
So I get to stare at Danny's bewildered face right now as I give you my thoughts about how fitness isn't everything but affects everything.
Uh-huh.
Interesting. Okay. So nothing to weigh in on yet in this conversation, huh?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Just listening right now.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep going then. So, anyways, yeah, I mean, I feel like there is this in between place where when it comes to fitness, you know that you're making the best decision possible, not just for yourself, but for your quality of life, right? I mean, it's a given. You're becoming a healthier person. This is not something you want to compromise. But then there's the other side of the equation where some of what you're doing is arguably selfish, and it actually there's compromises that you need to make. There's choices that you need to make to be a better athlete, and it takes away from other areas of your life, and that affects others as well.
We could not be coming at this from a more different perspective.
Well,
all right, guys, you always say you want to hear me and Giacomo go at it. So this
still it.
Maybe episode 100 is the showdown because you lost me quite a bit here. My interpretation of fitness isn't everything, but it affects everything was the fact that, sometimes people assume that when you're into fitness, for lack of a better term, that like that's it. That's your whole life. You're obsessed with fitness and, people are like, fitness isn't everything. You can do things outside of fitness. You don't have to just be obsessed with fitness. So people will say, fitness isn't everything. You don't have to be obsessed with it. And they're right. You do not have to be sort of obsessed with fitness because it isn't everything. There's a million other facets of your life outside of fitness. However, I believe that fitness does affect all of those other aspects of your life, which I guess I hear you saying that, but past that, I think we're on very different pages here. When I think about how fitness affects other aspects of your life, what I mean is things like when you are a fitter person, generally you have more energy. Generally, your mood is better. Generally, your sleep is better. Over time, your confidence improves. When your confidence and your mood is better, your relationships improve. Like I can go down the list of almost every single corner of my life and explain how being a fitter person has improved everything. Absolutely everything across the board is better because of somebody's ability to prioritize fitness and their health. Mm-hmm. That's what I interpreted that to mean.
Okay.
You're talking about the negative effects of fitness on your life. I'm talking about all of the positive effects of fitness on your life.
Well, I think there's negative and positive in everything, and I think to only focus on the positive would be disingenuous. So that's why I want to go with the compromises, because I do feel, look, I've been into fitness since I was 14 years old. And I have a love and a passion for this. It ain't never going to go away. It's just not. When I think back of all the times when I could have been doing something else that I wanted to be doing, but I was working out harder or focused on eating like an athlete, sometimes I look back and I regret, or I second guess myself. I'm like, my lifestyle is different. And obviously I justify what I'm doing because I surround myself around like-minded individuals, and I feel like I want to live like an athlete, right? But sometimes I look around and I'm like, this is a little challenging at times when I'm hanging out with people that are not athletic-minded. And there are some things that I genuinely want to do, or there are some ways that I want to be that have nothing to do with fitness that I can't necessarily do because I'm so focused on being a fitter and healthier person. Yeah, I'm happy about it. And yes, I think overall it's a net positive. But it would be disingenuous of me to be like, nah, this is all good, Mm-hmm. There are certainly some times where I'm like, sometimes I just want to lay back and kick it and just chill, and I don't know that that's always possible because I have an agenda, I have to get to bed at a certain time, or I need to make sure I get my workout in, or I want to make certain that I make nutritious, healthy choices that are also going to help me repair my body that I'm constantly beaten down. I want to use my body and beat on it because what's the purpose of having a body that is healthy in old age as far as living long if my body isn't strong, if I don't have strong bones and strong muscles? But there's a lot of pain in that. There's a lot of pain in getting stronger, and there's a lot of focus on recovery.
There's also a lot of pain in not being fit, in not being healthy. I would argue there's way more pain in dealing with preventable long-term health issues from being out of shape or cardiovascularly weak or getting injured doing basic stuff around your house because you don't have any muscle there. Like, I think that would be way worse. And there's that meme that's like, being out of shape is hard. Being in shape is hard. Pick your hard. And it's like, well, that makes my eyes roll all the way to the back of my head. But there is some truth to it. Like, no one's saying that and I think we're kind of talking about slightly different things. I think you're talking about being like a competitive athlete, and I'm just talking about getting your fitness under control, not like being super anal retentive about every little area of fitness all the time, or even quote unquote beating your body down. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about being fitter, like in general. Mm-hmm. So I think we're kind of coming at it from different places, because we've talked ad nauseum on this podcast about how being too extreme into fitness, being too extreme into bodybuilding, being too extreme into dieting and obsession with clean eating, like all of that is bad. But just being a fitter person in general, I can't see that as bad at all, even though there are some sacrifices, like not getting plastered on a Friday night. Yep, probably not going to be able to do that and then do your workout the next day. But I think largely everything that it has done for my life has been hugely positive. And I see that almost every time I bump into somebody from high school. It is just so glaringly obvious how much, like, prioritizing my health and trying to stay in like pretty decent shape and take care of myself pretty well, like, what a big difference that is from some of my peers who did not make those choices. It's like night and day.
Yeah. And that's the long-term gratification that you get out of it that's hard to really put a finger on, put into words to articulate just how beneficial it is as far as your long-term health goes. The short-term sacrifices, though, I mean, sometimes it's a little challenging, I guess, because you don't feel like you should have to justify what you're doing or explain it, but like, people don't understand. You know what I mean? You could, say, surround yourself with like-minded individuals, or, keep your circles tight and hang with the people that are going to get you. But it doesn't always work like that. So, yeah, I mean, be unapologetic and be who you are. And at the end of the day, you are a better person for everyone. However, it doesn't make it any easier to have to explain to others, like, look, this makes it so that I'm better. You're not being selfish by taking care of yourself, essentially. Does that make any sense?
I guess, but I don't think you owe anybody an explanation, honestly.
Fair enough.
And I feel like the longer you do it, the more obvious it becomes, not just to you, but to all those people who all along were ragging on you for not doing it their way. Over the years, like, it becomes very apparent to them why you chose the path that you chose, because they're starting to fall apart and you're not. And they're like, what the heck? Why can so-and-so get all of this housework done on the weekend and then go for a run at night? Like, how is that possible when it's like, I'm exhausted just mowing my lawn? Like, that sort of stuff becomes so much more obvious as you get older. That gap from person to person health-wise is insane the older you get. And I assume, I can't believe it, I'm gonna be 37 in a couple months, but I assume as you get older, that gap gets even wider. And we all know this. Like, we've all seen somebody in their 70s who's like still super mobile and agile and still working out and eating healthy and doing all of their own errands and stuff. And we also know somebody who's 70 who is completely bedbound. And not to say that that's entirely their fault, who knows what's going on, but sometimes it is largely lifestyle factors. That's the differentiating thing there. So when I say fitness affects everything, I mean it. Like, I think your level of fitness does affect pretty much everything. Over time, it affects your confidence. You have more confidence when you know you're capable of going on a 4,000-foot hike or something and then being fine to go to work the next day, or squatting 1.5 times your body weight, or like there's a confidence that comes with that. There's also obviously a discipline that comes with that. You don't reach these things without being disciplined. And that discipline carries over, or it certainly can carry over, into other areas of your life. It can carry over into your discipline with your finances, or your chores around your house, or how you take care of things. Like, I'm not saying it necessarily will, but it can. I have found that to be true in my life. And also, when you are a disciplined person, you are also more confident. So all of those things really are intertwined with fitness. And that's not even touching on like the actual health markers of being a fit person. Have you guys heard of the Vegan Cruise? If not, we want to tell you about it because we are so excited to be presenters on the 2023 cruise, and we would love to see you guys there. So the Vegan Cruise is exactly what it sounds like and so much more. It's a cruise from March 17th to March 24th that leaves from Miami and will be visiting Belize, Honduras, Costa Maya, and the Bahamas on the beautiful MSC Divinia. It is so cool to wake up in a new country every day of the trip, seriously. But as if that wasn't enough, one of the biggest drawbacks of most cruises is that there's nothing vegan to eat. I had a client actually go on a cruise recently, and she said she was shocked at how little she could eat, and for that price, it just was not worth it for her. But that's not a problem on this cruise because all 3 meals are fully catered, vegan, and made by gourmet chefs. You will never be hungry. There are also get-togethers like ice cream socials and pizza parties out by the pool. Very fun. And to top all of that off, the cruise is absolutely loaded with some of the biggest leaders in the vegan movement, giving lectures, presentations, and classes. Folks like Dr. Greger, Dr. Barnard, Dr. Clapper, Robert Cheek, Juliana Hever, and so many more, and of course, us. We will be hosting exercise classes and giving presentations on plant-based fitness. And of course, we would very much love to spend time with any of our listeners who come out. So if you're interested, click the link in the show notes to book your spot because it always sells out. And mention vegan proteins when you book and you'll get a $50 onboarding credit at the vegan bookstore. We look forward to vacationing with you guys.
The discipline stuff is where you're speaking my language, and that's the part where sometimes I feel like it's a hard sale to others where they're like, well, I'm doing this thing, so I'm adding to what I'm doing here and I'm taking away from other stuff. And I feel like that's where I butt heads with people a lot, and I have to convince them that the discipline, it's more than just a discipline as far as habit, routine, and consistency. It is the fact that you are a disciplined person and you're doing it in a way that makes you healthier. It's like a win-win.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's a hard sale because you look at the hours on a clock, you look at the minutes and you look at the seconds, and you say to yourself, well, if I'm giving time to this, I'm taking away from other things,
mm-hmm.
right? Or you one way to frame it is, well, I'm giving to this, and although I could hypothetically be taking away from other things in my life, I'm more efficient at everything else.
Right. So I would say, yes, obviously, if you're training for an hour, you're not doing something else for an hour, mostly. But if you actually audit your time and the way you want an eye-opening exercise, holy crap. Audit how you spend your time every day for a week. You are going to blow your own mind with the numbers of hours you quote unquote waste doing something that doesn't add value to your life. And I'm not just saying like, oh, you probably spend like 8 hours in front of the TV, because for some people, chilling out watching TV at the end of the night, that does add some value to their life. But you're going to find pockets in there of stuff that you did not need to do. I mean, are you awake in the morning, but you're just lying in bed for an hour before you get up? How often do you find yourself picking up your phone to do one thing and then scrolling 15 minutes away before you even realize it? That happens a couple times a day. That's your whole workout right there. Like these little tiny pockets that aren't serving you, they add up. It's about priorities.
I'm going to drop a truth bomb right now, and maybe it'll confuse you for a minute, but I'm curious to hear your take on it. I look at what you're saying and I hear you and I listen to you and I think it makes a lot of sense. But sometimes I look at that kind of way of being and I say to myself, do I constantly have to be a better and better person who's constantly growing and constantly working myself and it's never enough and I have to keep going, I keep going. Like there's a lot of anxiety around that sometimes I feel like from a mental health perspective, like, yeah, it's helping me and I'm gaining more energy, but at what cost to like how I'm operating on a day to day because I'm constantly trying to be better. And sometimes I wrestle with that idea.
Well, I think there absolutely is toxic productivity in America for sure, probably in other countries as well, but definitely here. There's this idea that if you're not always doing something productive, then you're wasting your time. That's why I said, quote unquote, wasting your time. Watching TV is not necessarily wasting your time if it adds value to your life. Communicating with your friends on social media is not a waste of time if it adds value to your life. Whatever it is, a video game, if it adds value, the question is, does it actually add something to your life or not? But I will plant my flag on this hill that I don't care if someone thinks it's toxic productivity or what. Getting exercise in on a regular basis is absolutely important. Period. End of story. I've heard it estimated that exercise, diet, sleep, and water, like those things right there, can improve mental health issues like 85% right out of the gate. Before you even start with therapy, before you even start with things like medication, those things right there can make huge improvements by themselves. So it is literally like a dose of preventative medicine to get your exercise in. It doesn't matter if that's different than the kind of exercise we talk about a lot on here. It doesn't matter if it's not strength training. It can be whatever kind of exercise you like. Moving your body 150 minutes per week, which isn't really that much, given how much time is in a week, is preventative medicine. You have to do it. Period. End of story. I don't care if you're like, oh, I don't want to always have to be doing something to get better and better. Chances are you're not. You're probably not. If you're not exercising, I highly doubt you're spending every other minute of the day working towards bettering yourself.
So let's pause for a minute and and let me know if you disagree with me. What we think are bottom line necessities to be a healthier, better person. Meaning, okay, this is your baseline. I feel like 2 to 3 30 to 45 minute resistance sessions. That's what you need to be doing every week, no matter what. It's non-negotiable. That is probably not enough for most people who have been at it for more than a year. But when all else fails and your priorities shift, you should still be doing that every week.
Is that a question?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is a lifestyle tip because, again, especially the fitness industry perpetuates this stuff. I'm sorry, it just does. You got to be super on it and more hardcore, and you got to train 5 days a week for an hour, preferably 90 minutes, so sometimes 2.5 hours if your goal is strength-based, right? It's like, listen, I get it. We got goals. Sometimes life is like that. But bottom line is, even when your priorities shift, whether it's an emergency or there's something else you're interested in, 2 to 3 times a week, 30 to 45 minutes, resistance training sessions, non-negotiable, every week. That's tip number 1 when it comes to movement. I think it's also important outside of that to find a way for 15 minutes, at least twice a week, to do something good for your heart or to just get your body moving. Preferably a mix of the two, like mix it up. Something more than power walking for like 15 minutes once or twice a week. But it doesn't have to be something that's faster than power walking because if nothing else, our bodies were meant to move and walking is what we were meant to do for the rest of our life. And as long as like we haven't damaged ourselves over the years, like you should be walking. You should be walking 15 minutes 1 to 2 times a week, and ideally finding a way to improve your cardiovascular health. It should be more than power walking. Maybe one of those sessions could be something like jogging on a treadmill or, I don't know, hopping on your bike for 15 minutes. So that's my thoughts in terms of what you should be doing. Bottom line, no matter what. If you're not doing that for more than, say, 1, 2, 3 weeks in a row, you need to find a way to get back to it. And I literally do not care what's going on in your life. Like that is your bottom line. That is what you want to get back to as soon as possible as far as your bare to bones minimum when it comes to fitness. Not say you can't do more than that, but I don't feel like you should be doing less than that in terms of your overall health, and your overall fitness. Now, I come to you, Jane, and I ask you, what do you feel like are your non-negotiables when it comes to nutrition? Give our audience, like our listeners, some tips, some ideas. What do you think, nutrition-wise? What are your non-negotiables here?
Eat regular meals at regular intervals. Prioritize vegetables. Prioritize protein. Drink water. It's pretty simple, actually. I don't think that there's a blanket instruction for nutrition that we could give as a baseline for everybody. I don't think there possibly could be.
Okay, fair enough. Well, and I realize I'm being a little iterative here, but I feel like it's really important to drill the point home as far as like what your basic needs are. Because again, it's easy to fall into a trap where sometimes you second guess yourself when you're doing something for a very long period of time, and perhaps like you're like, well, I can't do as much as I usually am doing, but I got to do something, or you know what I mean? It's like that all or none type of mentality. I think your sleep hygiene and your hydration are also super duper important no matter what. You know, finding a way to get to have at least 6, preferably 7+ hours of sleep on average. You know, I think there are periods of time where you could have a little less than that. But if you're doing this for more than like 2 to 3 weeks, get back to it. Same thing with hydration, you know, drinking half your body weight in water. So again, I realize these things are seemingly silly to continue to say.
I'm going to clarify that. Drinking half of your body weight in pounds in ounces of water each day, not half your body weight in water. That'd be a lot of water.
Yeah, you probably don't want to do that. But anyways, right. Like sometimes it's helpful to know that you have a basic hard line that cannot be compromised no matter what's going on in your world. And it's always good to know you can come back to that as these are your non-negotiables, right? And then obviously you can be on the opposite side of the spectrum where you're doing things really well and you have some good momentum and you can keep building on that. And believe you me, you can get back to that in a heartbeat as long as you don't compromise what your basic needs are when it comes to movement, when it comes to how you eat and how you fuel yourself. You know, sometimes I feel like there's this fear that you're at a point where you're doing things really, really well and you're stacking and you're doing things even better. But it's like, oh, crap, all I can do is take care of my basic needs when it comes to movement and when it comes to how I'm eating. Now, how am I going to get back to the other side? Well, again, like anything else, you have the skill, you have the tools. You can get back there in a heartbeat and continue to do even more. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of where my head's at with things in terms of knowing that you could keep on going no matter what. And you can also prioritize other things in life, but like you can be a healthy person for the rest of your life.
Hey listeners, we hope you've been enjoying this episode and we appreciate your love of all things vegan fitness. For those of you who want even more support on your vegan fitness journey, check out our Muscles by Brussels community and become a member. By joining the team, you are one of our exclusive VIPs. As a member, you'll find over 200 macro-friendly, high-protein recipes that can meet any of your meal planning needs. You'll also receive training programs that update monthly. This training has progressive overload built into it, so you can be sure if you're following the program, you are making progress. All of this and more is located inside our Vegan Proteins members only app. As a Muscles by Brussels member, you'll unlock bonus courses, challenges, and more every month. You'll also be invited to our live Zoom video calls, which happen 2 times a month, and are absolute gold to those who show up. And if you can't make the calls, don't worry, you have the opportunity to email us whenever you want. You'll receive a video response to all of your questions from one of the coaches here at Vegan Proteins every time you message us. Members also receive 40% off many of our other services. And of course, our private community of like-minded individuals is like no other. Best of all, you can try this membership out for a full month at no cost to you with this special offer for our listeners only, because we appreciate and want to fully support you. Use the link in our show notes to sign up for your free trial today. We hope to see you on our next live coaching call.
Moving on to our question and answer segment. This one is for you, Giacomo. How do you manage prep through the holiday season?
I have to think about this one for a second, Danny. One, step one is commitment. You've made the commitment. I go back to something Danny said, and I say it a lot to my clients, and I say it to myself as well. You have to remember that you made this choice. No one made this choice for you. No one's forcing you. No one's twisting your arm to do what you're doing. Because otherwise you can get so wrapped up in like, oh, I could be doing something else, or I'm not enjoying Thanksgiving and what's on my plate the same way, or you start to negotiate away from what you're doing. The holidays are the perfect time to justify just getting lost in, I don't know, whatever, celebrating, enjoying with in a certain way, put it that way. But when it comes to prep, like you don't have that luxury. You just don't. Yeah, I mean we could talk till the day is long all about being flexible and knowing how to make sensible decisions and being creative about how you hang with others and not, you could still be present with others and still make the right choices and not let anyone else feel it. But, at the end of the day, there are requirements when you prep. When you're in competition prep, like you absolutely have to be aware of what your intake is. You just do. There's no two ways about it. And sometimes that means, for some, it means tracking. For others, it means being intuitive, but being intentional, like having a plan, like whether you're thinking about it or whether you're putting it on paper before you go. Me personally, I've gotten to the point where I can write stuff out and I can think about stuff and I don't have to actually track and put it into a calculator or like think about these are the amount of macros that I'm getting in. But it wasn't always like that. There's no shame in that. Sometimes you have to track. And as you get better at it, though, you can get to a place where maybe you don't even have to journal. Maybe you don't have to think about it. Maybe you just know. I think that's the long-term path. But whatever it is, regardless, like you absolutely have to make the commitment to yourself to go through it and to do it. And it's more than just discipline. It's knowing yourself, knowing that you have to have a certain path and a certain plan. It ain't just going to come to you. You have to be intentional about it going into the holidays, because if you're not, you're going to make concessions with yourself and you're going to get wrapped up into certain expectations because, well, okay, let's frame this around prep. You don't prep every year. So there's a certain way that you like to be around the holidays. And most of the time, that's fine. But when you're prepping, your lifestyle is a little different. And I think the sooner, you accept that, and you go into it with more than discipline, more than intention. You go into it with the right plan as far as what you're going to do, right? And you do it. I don't know. That's anything you want to add to that?
If I can have my clients avoid prepping through the holidays, I try to talk them out of prepping through the holidays because in general, I don't think it's a great idea. I think most people are going to fail at it. And anything that I think there's a high likelihood someone's going to fail at it, I don't think they should attempt it. I think we should set up a strategy where we think there's a high likelihood that they will succeed at it, and that's where we should move forward. Prepping through the holidays, I think I've had one client do it ever, and she did a pretty good job with it, but it was really, really, really hard, and she was a very unique situation where I did think that she was going to succeed at it, whereas most people, I do not think they are. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't want to do it. So that's just me personally. If you can avoid prepping through the holidays, avoid it.
I happen to agree with you there for sure. This question's for you, Danny. Do natural bodybuilders manipulate water intake before a show? What methods? Safety, science, please.
Okay. So, first of all, this is a great question. And the Washington Post just posted this incredible piece about the high rate of deaths of bodybuilders in the NPC and the IFBB. And the number one reason for these deaths, which is shocking to no one, is drugs. But probably the most deadly of the drugs, I would say, is the diuretics that a lot of professional IFBB and NPC, and well, NPC wouldn't be professional, but it's there too. You get the point, that they take. So water manipulation going into a peak week or even like a photo shoot, right? When it comes to the bodybuilders that are on drugs, there is a ton of water manipulation going on because they are taking things like Lasix to get as much water out of their body as possible, which is super, super, super dangerous. Now, when it comes to natural bodybuilders, certainly there are bodybuilders who manipulate their water and who dehydrate for the entire week leading up to it and sit in the sauna and do all of those things. Like, those people do exist. They're just not taking drugs while they do it, which is great that they're not taking drugs while they do it. I don't think it's the smartest way to do it. I think, so with my clients, and it varies from person to person, there is almost always some gentle water manipulation going on into peak week. It's usually more water loading than water cutting. So instead of like a week where you barely drink any water, it's actually usually like 5 days or so where you drink a ton of water, like twice as much as normal, with salt following it. Like, salt increases as well, because you don't want to increase water too much without increasing salt, or you can risk hypotrinemia, or maybe it's hypertrinemia. Basically, it's too much water and not enough electrolytes in your system, and it could cause heart problems. So salt has to go up as well as water. And then you kind of bring that water back down to normal levels or a little bit below normal levels right before the show. And the idea is that you'll pee out a little bit of extra water right before you go on stage. What you absolutely do want to do is make sure you're at least tracking water going into a show, because you don't want to have your water be all over the place before you step on stage. But why I don't think people should just straight up cut water is because most of the water that we store in our body is stored in our muscles. And the analogy that I always use is a waterbed. Does everybody remember waterbeds from like the 80s? If you ever went up to a waterbed that was half full and pushed on it, it would go whoosh, 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 and ripple across, right? It was squishy. But a waterbed that was totally full felt like a regular mattress. It was firm. Muscles are like that. If they're only half full of water or carbohydrate or creatine, like when they are not full, they're softer, they're squishier. But when they are full, they are firmer, they look fuller. Any fat that lays on top looks tighter across the skin. It's just a better look in general. So, if you have no idea what to do with your water going into peak week, my advice is do nothing. Do nothing with it. Keep it exactly the same. A gallon a day is pretty safe for everybody, every bodybuilder. Keep it at a gallon a day, every single day going into the show. Maybe do 3/4 of a gallon on Friday. That is the easiest, simplest thing that you can do with your water to make sure nothing crazy is going to happen on show day.
Yeah. And I think that's the name of the game, just to add to this conversation a little bit, hopefully not take away or confuse y'all. How do I say this? When it comes to being at a place where you are so close to your competition season, there are things that you wind up inadvertently and intentionally doing just to deal with primal urges to
Hunger,
eat.
yeah.
So like, you wind up, again, whether it's intentional or whether it's unintentional, there are things that you do to your body that place your body under stress and make your body look a certain way. And you ain't going to look your best out there if you don't like dial that in. And some of that means being aware of how much water you're getting in, like keeping that consistent, being aware of how much sodium you're getting in, keeping that consistent. And if any of those things are like completely out of whack, it can affect how you look out there. It most certainly can, because we're talking about water here, water manipulation. And water manipulation, for the information you need here, some of it has to do with sodium as well.
Water and sodium go hand in hand.
Yeah.
One should not change without the other one changing.
Right. And so, when you're really hungry, you just wind up getting more sodium because...
And liquid.
and liquid. And whether you like it or not, it happens to the best of us. And if you don't keep those things consistent and preferably even dial them in a little bit so that you look your best, you just, it's going to negatively affect the way you look out there. So step 1 is to be aware and to keep those levels consistent. And to step 2 is to think about how you'll look your best out there. And again, this is not it's not like, go on a crazy water cut or like make your sodium super high and or super low. It's just a matter of having those things balanced and having them be reasonable. There's nothing wrong with those things being extreme a couple weeks before your season, but when you get close to your season, like those things need to be relatively level.
Last thing I'm going to say that isn't directly related to the question, but I think it's important. When we talk about increasing water and how sodium needs to increase as well, there's always somebody who's like, but sodium's bad for you, I'm not going to do it. And you can drink too much water and not have enough salt and end up in the emergency room on the verge of a heart attack or kidney failure. And this has happened to one of my clients before. One time, probably 7 years ago, we increased a client's water for peak week with the sodium, but she didn't want to increase the sodium because she thought it was going to make her bloated. So not only did she not increase it, but she decreased it. And 2 days before the show, she went into the emergency room. And when they tested her, there was not enough electrolytes in her blood. And I mean, there was not enough electrolytes in her blood. It was so diluted from all of the fluids that she ended up in the emergency room. She was okay, and she did end up competing, and she did fine, but it was very scary and definitely made me be a hell of a lot more stern about, I don't care what you think about sodium, increase your goddamn sodium when you drink more water. It's important. So for those of the sodium phobes out there, it's actually really important. It actually keeps your heart ticking. Do most Americans probably eat too much of it? Probably. But if you're an athlete and you sweat a lot and you drink a lot of water, it is very important that you not try to cut sodium out of your diet. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to our 100th episode of Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. If there's anything you'd like to hear us talk about, go to veganproteins.com, hit the contact button. We'd love to hear from you. Also, you can find our programs and our one-on-one coaching application there. Reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, at Vegan Proteins and at Muscles by Brussels. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Danny.
And I'm Giacomo.
And we'll talk to you soon.